Hi everybody, this is Bastiaan and this is a game I played against the pseudo French. So I'm calling this pseudo French because black does not complete this French defense fully. So I'm playing white, play starts with e4 and black plays e6, the start of the French defense. And I play d4, the classical approach, taking control of the center. And black continues with bishop to b4 check, instead of the normal development of the pawn to d5. And this is very aggressive and good development by black. So I continue with knight to c3. Of course now black can take on the knight, but after pawn takes pawn, I'm getting a nice control of the center. Black has lost the bishop pair, and all he has is a pathetic pawn on e6. So this is definitely winning for white, even if I have double pawns. But bishop takes knight was not played. Instead black plays knight to f6, attacking the pawn on e4, which is currently unprotected. So now there are several ways to continue. I can play bishop to d2 to counter the pin. I can play bishop to d3, protecting the pawn on e4, or I can even play bishop to g5 with a counter pin on the knight. So I choose bishop to d3, a developing move. Black plays c5. So now we're seeing some counterplay in the spirit of the Sicilian. Black is trying to exchange his flanking pawn for a center pawn of white. And it's a good central pawn because I'm having a pawn island in the center. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do against it. I cannot advance the d4 pawn. So pawn takes pawn. Now black will recapture. Black plays the in-between move knight to c6. I play knight to f3. And finally the bishop takes on the pawn on c5. Play continues with castle, and black castles as well. And now on move 7, black has made a tactical blunder, because I can play e5, attacking the knight on f6, the knight which is needed to protect the pawn on h7. So the knight has to move. Black cannot recapture. Knight moves to g4, creating some counterplay with an attack on the weak f2 pawn. I continue with the bishop sacrifice on h7. So bishop h7 check. Now if king recaptures, say king takes bishop, I can play knight to g5 check. Also with a discovered attack on the knight, regaining my last minor piece. So I will be up a pawn with mate threats. So black wisely declines to recapture the piece. Plays the best move, king to h8 instead. h3, and this knight has nowhere to go, so black continues with his attack. Knight takes pawn, rook takes knight. Now of course the bishop can retake the rook on f2, but instead of recapturing immediately, black continues development with queen to b6. Of course, this rook is pinned, there's no rush. Queen to b6 allows for bishop captures rook without the possibility of king recaptures on f2. Fortunately, I have a defense against that. Knight to e4, adding an extra defender. And now bishop takes rook and knight takes. And now black's king takes on h7. Knight to g5 check. Of course, if king retreats, we get queen to h5 with the mate threat on h7. So the king is forced into the open, which allows a different tactic by white. Queen to d3 check. The knight on g5 is still protected by the bishop. So f5 in an attempt to block the check. Pawn takes pawn en passant. King takes pawn. Bishop e3, getting in some free minor piece development. However, this leaves the b2 pawn without protection. So queen takes pawn on b2, threatening the rook with tempo and even threatening an attack on white's king. However, this is a trap, and now black will lose the queen. It's not so obvious. Knight to e4 check was played. Now bishop to d4 with a fork definitely does not work because of the protection of the knight. So knight f to e4 check. King has to move. He cannot move to g6 because g6 will lead to a mating attack after knight to f6 discovered check. And if black takes on the knight, of course he cannot move to h6 because of all the checks he will move into. If king takes on f6, he can continue with rook to f1 check, and after king to e5 we will win the exchange, but also we have a mating attack because of the dual threat of bishop to f4 check and knight to f4 check. And there's no defense to both of the threats, so black is in a forced mate. So after knight f2 e4 check, black plays king to e7, which is best. Now bishop to c4 c5 check. King moves to e8, so we're getting a discovered attack on the rook, but that's not the point. The point is to hunt the queen. So knight to d6 check, and king moves to d8. If king moves to e7 instead, we can get the queen easily with the discovered check. But king d8 was played. White continues with knight takes pawn check, and pawn takes knight. Now knight to c4 check, with the discovered attack on the queen. Bishop to d7 to block. And now white of course can complete his plan to gain the trapped queen, but even stronger is to play the in-between move, rook to d1 with a mate threat, and this forces the knight to b8 to protect the bishop. So instead of gaining the queen immediately, I get in a free rook development, and black has to retreat the knight, which helps white of course. And finally now, knight takes on b2, gaining the queen. Rook to f5, attacking the bishop. Now I can take advantage of black's undeveloped pieces. Queen to e4. Black takes on the bishop, I take on the pawn, so I'll be gaining a pawn and a rook for a bishop. Rook to c8, queen takes rook, knight to c6, queen b7, rook to c7, queen to b3. Of course now I'm threatening queen takes pawn, and the bishop cannot recapture because of the pin. So knight to e7, queen takes pawn, king to e8, and queen to d6. So I'm attacking the rook, and if the rook moves, I have an attack on the bishop. King d8, now knight to a4, and of course the bishop cannot recapture because of the discovered check. Knight to g6, and finally the knight develops to c5, adding another attacker on the bishop on c7, and this bishop is lost. King c8, knight takes bishop, a6, queen takes pawn, check, rook blocks, and knight develops to c5, attacking the rook, so the rook is lost as well. Knight to h4, queen takes, and checkmate. So that was my game against the pseudo French. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and have a great evening.